Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Robbie.
I'm Jason.
And we are the Bards of the Board. Welcome to the table. We are so glad to have you here. I got a little spooked there because Jason got really excited for our visual watchers.
I've been waiting for so long, so I'm so excited. Threw you off. Sorry about that.
No, normally it's like we vibe a little bit. For those of you who are podcast, like if you're an audio listener only, it's very, very chill.
Yeah.
And Jason is a very expressive person when you like chat with him, and you're in person. But like, I don't normally get like the big, like motions out of you. So how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, man. We, as our job, get to go work at a disc golf tournament, a pro disc golf tournament this week. It's pretty crazy, honestly. Like it's awesome. I mean, I'm still new to the disc golf world, but I'm a sports fan my entire life. Big fan of disc golf now. And to get to go work at one down in Nashville, Tennessee, I can't complain. I'm excited. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. And we get to be roommates.
Yep.
This
true.
week. So, we'll get to it in a second, but, what games do we play? I told Jason, I was like, I'm just going to be honest, brother. It's been a crazy busy couple weeks, and I've only played one game. He said, well, don't worry, we'll get to play a couple this weekend.
Yeah, with us staying in the same place. Probably more than a couple, but yeah.
So it'll be a great time. We have a fantastic episode lined up for you guys. This is it's a game that when dice are involved. If you've seen this, you've seen the title, you know what game we're talking about. But I'll go ahead and tell you, dice are involved, but it is one of the most visually satisfying games I've ever played.
Totally agree. It's gorgeous. It's easy to get distracted by how gorgeous it is, for sure. Like it's an art piece you could put on the wall. You literally could just sit it up, and it could be an art piece on your shelf, but also a board game. It's pretty nice. So
very, very excited, but we'll dive into games that we've been playing recently. And I'll go first. That way, I can just jump past it. I had a disc golf tournament, first disc golf tournament back in a year and a half of taking off of those tournaments. And so I went to my in-laws' house and got to hang out there because the tournament was about 20 minutes away from them. It's an easy tournament to convince my wife that I can go play because I can be like, hey, let's board the dogs for the weekend and you and I just go hang out with your family. That sounds like a good time. And she's always like, yeah, that does sound like a good time. Her sister was in town. And so we played Just One. We had talked about Just One. We had played Just One with them before, and they loved it so much that they bought a copy for their house. They bought a copy for the family lake house. Like they bought all these copies, but they had not played it since we had played it way back when, and we brought it for a family trip. So we literally had to bust out the packaging and the cards and all that. And y'all, Just One, we talked about it before, but we've never covered it in terms of a party game, but it is definitely a game that I feel like if you host people on a regular basis and you love board games, you have to have this in your collection. I do think it made both of our, if you're building a game collection, I think it was in both of our top 10s. And Just One, it's this idea of a shared mindset is the world. And so there's a card that has 5 words on it. You pick one of those words as the person guessing. You don't know what it is, but everyone else knows what it is. And they write down just one word on a little easel. And on that little easel, then they all try those words, though, they're going to show them to you to get you to guess what word is on the card. But if anyone has duplicates, you don't get to see that word. So super fun with 4 people or 5 people total, because 4 people are writing clues, which means, and it happened to us, that there is a world that 2 people write one word and 2 people write another word. And so my poor mother-in-law, her first time getting back around, and we looked at her and she's like, all right, how many do I get? Because they have their eyes closed while you're showing the clues and everything. And Jason, she's like, how many do I get? And I am just cackling. And her dad, her husband is just like, I can't believe that we did this. I can't believe we did this. And I was like, don't worry, Mom, easy round, no pressure on you because you have no clues. Like you just have to guess a word,
say a word
in the English language. And it's sometimes it's like, it'll be like, there are like actual proper nouns or something that'll show up. And it's like, oh, you got to guess this one, like Cleopatra or something.
Yeah.
So it's not even as easy as like castle. Okay, sure. But just reminded, we had on, at that point, we had the March Madness games on. And so we were just watching the game. And then it was just, I would get up, grab a card, ask what number they wanted, and I would walk the card around so everyone could see it and then hand them their card. Super, super fun.
Yeah.
Love Just One.
It is it truly is. I think we both had on our list, like you said. It's one of the few games that I've ever introduced that has never fallen short. I've never found someone who, unless they were really good liars or actors, didn't enjoy playing the game ever. And I've played it a lot of different places. I remember your first Birdie Fam get together. We didn't really know each other that much, but I came up and no one was doing anything. I was like, okay, let's just get Just One out. And so we sat down and people were like, oh, what is this thing? And then before you know it, people sit down who wouldn't be a gamer normally, and they're playing Just One because it's that easy. It's not a game in the traditional sense, the way we go heavy Euro games and deck building and set collection. You're just having fun. And I love Just One. We don't do the scoring. I don't know if you do scoring at all. We'll do two stacks, one we got right, one we got wrong, and never count them. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, we don't do the scoring at all. Love Just One. It's a great game. We own 2 or 3 copies, and I've given copies to my kids when they came to college. They had it, and I have 2 here. That way you could have a big game of Just One, because I think it's built to be like a 6-player game or 8-player game, but you could just add more people to it. And so we love Just One. I played that with for Super Bowl. I took that over to Dakota's, so I played that with Josh and his wife and Dakota and all their families there. We played Just One. That was a big hit, of course, so can't go wrong. We actually played Just One on Board Game Arena. So I think I text you, like, I'm getting bigger into Board Game Arena. So when we're together this week, I'll show you some more stuff. I know you've been on Board Game Arena, but that way, ideally, long term, you and I can have a game night, and that way, if there's a game we want to talk about that we haven't both played, we can play together. But long term, any of the folks who are love to be fans of Bards of the Board, love to play with us, we could also do a Board Game Arena for Bards of the Boards as well. So, but Just One on Board Game Arena, it slaps. The cool kids say slaps, right? That's what the cool kids say. It slaps. I don't know what they say now, right? But
no, it's so good.
It works really well and really clean and really easy on Board Game Arena. And so I played Just One as well. That's not one of the 2 games I'm talking about, but I actually played Just One this past week as well. We did an impromptu Board Game Arena night with Christopher and Mandy. We've talked about many times on the podcast, Liz's brother and sister-in-law. We played 3 games, like a little over an hour. We played Azul, Azul, Splendor, and Just One. Total playtime was maybe an hour and 10 minutes because Board Game Arena does all the station keeping for you, right? It tallies the score. It changes everything on the board. Like Azul, it throws everything out for you. You think about Azul, you got to pull the tiles out, pull these tiles, and do this. It just does it all. And then it scores for you at the end of each round. That's the best thing about Board Game Arena, without doubt, is that it is all the station.
No setup, yeah.
Elizabeth and I played Wingspan, and it resets the birds. It does everything that you have to remember to do. It just does it for you. Okay. Just One's great. You can't go wrong with Just One. I have actually played, so you've only played 1 game. I played 9, not including Board Game Arena, which is, I played a lot of solo games in Board Game Arena, but I just checked. I played 36 games on Board Game Arena in less than a week. A lot of them are solo, like going after a roll and write solo, right, or something like that. But the 2 games I'm going to talk about are both a little heavier. Excuse me. One is, I think I've done posts on our page about both. One's Dog Park. Dog Park, I missed the original Kickstarter because I was back and forth on whether I wanted to back it because it looked a little lighter than I wanted it to be. It is a midweight game. Definitely on the lighter side of the midweight game. And it's what it sounds like. You are walking dogs in a park is the thematics of it. And it's sort of a set collection, resource gathering game in which you're also activating the dogs. Not quite Wingspan-ish, but sort of adjacent to Wingspan because it's nature related and you're getting dogs for your kennel and you're taking them out on walks. And based on the walks you do, you're getting treats or different things along the way. Like you can stop here and play with a ball or stop here and get a chew toy. And that's another resource you have now later on to get dogs on your leash. You have in-game, you have private goals as well, like scoring goals, like do this many times or this many times, and some other in-game goals. And every single card is different. So every dog is unique. obviously, if you're a board game fan and you love dogs the way we do, and you want a lighter midweight game, it's definitely not pure entry level, but it's just one step above entry level. It's like the lowest of a midweight game. Super fun game, great production. We got the Kickstarter, so a lot of things are upgraded for sure. But it's super lightweight, super easy, fun to play, and it's one that I'm glad I didn't back it originally, but also I'm glad I backed this one as well. And like Wingspan, Wingspan, a good thing about Wingspan, you can just add more bird cards that do more things. Dog Park had a bunch of little mini expansions that do the same thing, that now introduce this dog that has this ability or this dog that has this ability. So it's fun. Lots of different breeds. And then the expansion, which you haven't played with, let's basically have like shelter dogs that are two different breeds. And so those two different breeds count for two different goals, which it will make the scoring that much more fun for sure. Love Dog Park. It's one that if you're not a hardcore gamer, it's 50-50 where they want to get it. But if you're a newer player, it's definitely a game you can learn quite easy because it doesn't have a ton going on. The other game we played is one that was the hotness for 2023. It's a game called Earth. It, rightfully so, is very much compared to Wingspan in that you're essentially doing a tableau and activating the tableau. That's an oversimplification of this, but you're building an island. You're growing an island. You're planting flora and fauna on your island, bunch of different plants, and then those cards, you can take actions to activate those cards, which may grow plants or may give you sprouts or may do other things. And some of those cards you're putting on a plant are also just in-game goals. The coolest thing about Earth, and it's definitely heavier midweight because there's just so much going on. Like our scores are always in the 200s. Talking about, whenever we play with you and you ask what a normal score is, I think I won 250 to 230 in the second game last night. So there's so many points, but they're so diverse and they're so varied, and that you have to kind of play as the cards come out, which path you're going to take. Like early in the second game yesterday, and Elizabeth got mad, rightfully so, because I ended up beating her. But early in the second game, we played twice in the last couple of days. My engine just wasn't going. I wasn't getting out cards that when I activated, I would just get something. I would get a card that if I activated, I had to give up something to get something. Not bad engine at all, right? But you got to then get something. And I was like, man, I just don't, like in the previous game we had won, I just had all these great cards in the previous game we played, I won, but I had cards very early that just gave me stuff. Yeah. But in that second game, I wasn't complaining. I was like, man, it's just like, we all agree. This is how the cards come out, that you still got to play the cards. And then before you know it, my engine is just going and it's just chugging along. I'm like, oh wow, I have a la Wingspan. Like Wingspan at the end of the game, tucked cards are points and eggs are points and cash food are points, right? Well, in Earth, your growth pieces, which kind of look like the pieces from Takanoko, Takanoko, the bamboo pieces where you're growing things that look very similar to Takanoko. Every one of those is one. And then sprouts, your little green cubes, every one of those is one. And you're also composting, which means you're just turning cards face down. Every one of those are one. And at one point I looked down, I'm like, oh wow, I already have like 32 sprouts on my cards. That's like having 32 eggs or 32 cash food. And I'm like, 2 turns ago, I didn't have any. That's the way it felt. And it just went wild. And Elizabeth got a little upset because he's like, you were complaining. Like, I know I shouldn't have said anything, that my engine wasn't going. And then my engine just started rolling. The last thing I'll say about Earth, what's super cool about it is that on each player's board, you have the exact same top. And you're like, okay, on my turn, I'm going to take the orange action. The orange action for me gives me 5 soil, which are your resources to play more cards, and then lets you draw 2 cards or something. I can't remember what it is. But underneath that, there's a big action, there's a small action. Everyone else at the table gets to do the smaller version of that action. So they can choose, I get 2 soil, or sorry, Siri's talking to me right now. I can get 2 soil, or 2 something else. So all 4 action, one is essentially planting cards, one is essentially getting soils, one is essentially getting sprouts, and one is essentially getting more cards. So when I take the action, I get the best version of that, but then everyone else gets the lesser version of that. So on every player's turn, you're doing something. Everybody is. You get something on every person's turn. So that's where, like, as a gamer, it's great. You're like, you have this wealth of stuff. But when you're trying to min-max, you're like, oh, there's so much stuff. And if you're a newer player, you will get overwhelmed very quickly because there's just so much going on. And so for a gamer, this is not a hard game because we like crunching our way around those kinds of things. But for a newer gamer, it is definitely very overwhelming because I get more stuff and I get more stuff. And the second part of that is, I'm talking a lot about Earth because it's just so cool. so there you take that action, but also in each of those spots, there's also colors, and the cards you're playing may have like a color bar that is the action when you activate that card. That's basically how you activate the card. So I go there, I get the bonus for that spot, and then I'm going to activate all the blue cards and all the multicolored cards. And you have to activate them left to right, top to bottom in your tableau. So how you put out your tableau matters too on how you build that engine. So it is like it is a raving runaway hit for a reason. I think it's maybe already top 10 in BGG after a year. It's going to get there really fast. And it's not a game that'll go away too quickly, because it takes these good things from other games like Wingspan, tucking, eggs, caching cards, all fun stuff. But what we've all realized, and I didn't realize at the time, is that the tough thing about Wingspan is the resource challenges, right? If you can't get your resources in Wingspan, and I didn't even realize how much that is a challenge until I played Wormspan and now these other games. Like, oh, Wingspan is so great. But when you see the little bitty, not flaw, but the little challenge you have, the chance challenge, it's like, oh, that's fun to try to go against that chance and see what you can do with it. But sometimes I just want everybody to give me a bunch of stuff and do stuff, right?
Yeah.
I talked way too long about Earth, but Earth is just it's simultaneous play. It's basically multiplayer solitaire, and then on your turn, you're doing a bunch of stuff, but I'm also doing a bunch of stuff. And then you're doing my stuff, then I'm doing my stuff. And then you're doing my stuff, I'm doing my stuff. So if you played a big game, like 3 or 4 players, that game's going to take a long time because everybody's activating their engine on every turn. Some version of their engine is being activated every single turn. So I wouldn't be crazy about playing it at 4 or 5 players. 2 players really great, and 3 is probably that sweet spot, and that you have enough diversity with people taking cards and helping cycle through stuff that is good. But then it's not like I'm sitting and waiting for every single person to do all their actions. So those are the 2 games I played. We played Dog Park, I think, 3 times, and Earth 2 times. Our new thing is that if I get a game to the table, I want to play it 2 or 3 times, because it may be months before I play it again. And so we just leave the stuff out on the table and try to get 2 to 3 plays each time.
Yeah, I definitely, I love you, brother. And I will say that I feel Elizabeth's pain. I can see the exact moment, because if you play a game, if you play enough games with Jason, he's a competitor. And so you can feel that competitive spirit wanting to come out and him trying to quell it in terms of like, I just don't think I'm doing that well. Like I'm not going to win. I'm not going to win. And then Elizabeth, like I've seen this exact exchange go on of, I'm just not doing well. Oh, shut up. Like, don't know. And then sure enough, we get to the end. It's like, in a surprising form and fashion, Jason won. So that's so funny. Like I can just, I see her in that moment. Man,
she was mad. But in my defense, the reason why I was not taking the gloves off, let's be clear, right? And everything you said is true, and I'm confessing my sins. But I'm looking through BG stats, and I won Fantastic February, but she won like the last 5 games or last 6 games. And then after that, of the next 11 games, because we played at least 11 that's just competitive, not cooperative, she's 8-3 in those games. So she's been smoking me. So one of these 3 wins was what I just did. So anyway, but you are right. And she was, cause she thought she had it. And then I played a card at the very end that's like, oh yeah, this gives me 2 points per this card. So it gave me, I just played a 16-point card. So just like that, out of nowhere. And I won by like 20. So that card could have been the difference. So.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. Like it is, I feel like when you play enough games, you end up in hot streaks and cold streaks. Like normal, like especially locally, I feel like I end up on a hot streak like quite often. And like the last several games that I've played, even at our house, like I feel like I'm putting a good game together. And then I look over and I'm like, oh, junk. They put a great game together. Okay, cool. Like playing Call to Adventure and thinking like, okay, I went with a little different strategy than I normally do, but I think it's still going to work. I think I'm still going to put a lot of points together. And then I look literally across the table and Abby just smokes us. And I was like, okay, touche. I love it. I love it. So speaking of things that we love, Jason, reviews. Yep. We are all about the reviews. Want to update on that before diving into our game. And I will say, we didn't move on Spotify reviews. So if you're a Spotify listener, if you're enjoying that, we would very much appreciate if you would be willing to support our show in a way. Guys, as I look at like the views and the downloads and things like that we're getting, it still blows my mind. Like I have several friends who run podcasts in a multitude of different genres. I've got a friend that runs a sports podcast. Like obviously inside the disc golf space, we know a little bit about podcasting, but like spreading beyond that, I've got a friend who does like a baseball podcast. I've got another friend that does a Survivor podcast, and talking numbers with them. I just want to say how grateful I am on behalf of Jason and I both of just the viewing that y'all have given us and the support that you've given us. So thank you so much. And the reason we're talking about these reviews is because at 50 reviews on Apple and 50 reviews on Spotify, that's 2 different giveaways that we want to do for you. And we're giving away a copy of Quacks of Clevelandburg, a Bards of the Board game that we love, and giving away those at 50 reviews on both platforms. So thank you guys so much for your feedback. And we are just beyond grateful for what you've been willing to do. But we're here to talk about a game that is beautiful, a game that is simple and yet crunchy, almost at the same time. It's like a weird world of, and I'll talk about this. You know what? I'll just save it. I'll save it because there is a fascinating ebb and flow to this game that I don't really feel like you find in a lot of other games. So Jason, let's hear about Sagrada, man.
For sure, man. Happy to do it. So yeah, today our featured game is Sagrada, released in 2017. Sagrada was designed by, and I'm going to get these names wrong because I actually don't know these names, but Adrian Adamescu and then Daryl Andrews. Thank you for designing that. Published by Floodgate Games. Sagrada is a 1 to 4 player game, and it plays in about 30 to 45 minutes, depending on the player count. Lower players are definitely going to be lower than that. The 4 players will be higher than that. There is an expansion that takes it to 5 to 6. We've said before in the podcast, because I had I have 3 kids, so a family 5. So whenever we bought games that only had 4-player capabilities, we always looked for expansion to take us up to 5. So it can get up to 5 very easily. In Sagrada, you are carefully constructing a beautiful stained glass window by drafting dice and using tools of the trade. As Robbie mentioned, it's pretty simple gameplay. On your turn, you're going to draft a die from the dice pool. We'll step back. The starting player is going to roll the die, create a draft pool, and then on your turn, you're going to draft a die and place it on the board following some placement rules. The 2 main placement rules are the same number die and or the same color die can never be orthogonally adjacent, so directly above or below or to the left or right. Can be diagonal, so 2 purples can't be side by side and 2 4s or 2 2s can't be side by side unless you use a different thing later on, which we'll talk about. So that's the placement rules. The last placement rule is the very first die of the game has to be placed from the edge, and from there you move forward. But you take a die and you place a die. Played over 10 rounds. Each player will draft actually 2 die each round. So your board is a 20 space board. It's a snake draft, which I love snake drafts. For those who don't know snake drafts, so say it's a 3-player game. It's me, Robbie, and Elizabeth, and turn order is myself, Robbie, and Elizabeth. I would take a die. Robbie takes a die. Then Elizabeth takes a die. And then she takes another die. And then Robbie takes a die and it comes back. So it goes down to the last person and comes back. So that's what a snake draft is. So you snake draft that, which has some fun challenge, some fun strategy later on we'll talk about. But I love snake drafts. Snake drafts can take a little longer, but I love the concept of getting to go first and last in a draft or going twice in a row. That rotates each time after each round the starting player turns. So every single person is going to do the different snake draft options. After 10 rounds, you add up the score based on some public objectives and private objectives. Whoever has the most points wins. Like I said, it plays pretty quick and is super easy to play. That was a quick highlight, but that's basically the entire gameplay as a high level.
Jason, we're 17 episodes in. I'm not going to lie to you. That might be the most succinct and yet well described overview of the game we've ever done.
I appreciate it.
So well played, brother. Well played.
My thanks go to the designers of the game because it's that easy to describe it. I appreciate that, but the ease of gameplay makes it very easy to describe it for sure. So
yeah. So one thing that I've talked about this before in an episode is that as someone who is hyper competitive, sometimes competitive to a fault, and I remember going to college and hearing someone, I took a strengths finder, like it was like a personality assessment type deal. And they told me that competition was one of my strengths. And I was like, I have never heard that in my life. All I've ever heard is that I'm too competitive. I take it too far, things like that. And it really helped shape that aspect of things for me. And board games are something that I love playing a thinky board game because I feel like it develops critical thinking skill. This is one of the best parts about our hobby is the ability to problem solve and critically think you get from just having fun, playing the right games, things like that. And my wife critiques me for that because she's like, Robbie, you can have a hobby that's just fun for being fun. Like that's allowed. And I'm like, I don't know about that, Scooter. Yeah. Same thing. Same reason I struggle to read fiction at times is because I'm like, if I'm going to spend time to read the book, I want to be better on the other side. So I'm going to read a self-help book instead anyways. But one thing that I think like helps curve that competitive edge is die. Because dice, some people hate die because there's so much random chance involved, and it can get super frustrating. But in a game like Sagrada, where all these die are being rolled, and to a degree, not only are die being rolled, but there is a bag of dice that you're pulling out. So there's a world that you're looking for specific colors to be pulled. You're looking for specific numbers to be rolled. And not only do those things have to happen, like in terms of specific numbers have to be rolled, but you could be looking for a red die because there's I think there's five colors.
Five colors.
Yeah. So there's 5 colors of die, and you could be looking for a purple die, and you're like, I don't care what number it is at this point. I just need a purple die because it's going to meet this specific goal that I'm looking for. And you get to like the final 3 rounds, and in a 2-player game, you're going to see a lot of dice. Like there are so many die that are going to come out, and not one of them could be purple. And you get to the end of their game and you like look inside the bag and you're like, oh, that's where they are. All right. That's so fun. But like from a competitive standpoint, I love it. I think that it helps me enjoy the strategy. And then at the same time, like it gives an out of like, you know what? I tried. The dice just literally, they didn't go my way. And I think that is such a fun element to it. But one of the aspects that when we played it the first few times, we were trying to figure out when you're building these stained glass patterns, and this is something you can kind of dive into, Jason, because I don't know the words to go with it, but there's patterns. You have this like player board that looks like a window, and then there are these patterns that literally slide in to your player board to show you like, hey, this is like the layout that your die somewhat have to follow. There's a bunch of free spaces, but they want to fill out this space. But depending on how difficult the pattern is to match, you get X amount of tokens, and I don't remember what they're called.
Yeah, we call them pips. They're little glass orbs, like little glass circles is what they get. So like what Robbie's referring to is like you are dealt, and we house, I don't know what the actual rule is, but we house rule, you get 2 of the cards that basically your goals, and you look at either side. And on the bottom right, it shows these little circles. It may show 3 circles, 5 circles, or 6 circles. The more circles it has, that's how many glass orbs you're going to get, because that one is more challenging. Because you get more glass orbs, because glass orbs you can spend to use the tools of the trade. Each game you play, there's 3 tools that are out. Those tools could be something as, hey, just draft a die and flip it to its opposite side. If you get a 2, but you really need that 5, flip it over to the 5. For those who don't know, every die always adds up to 7, right? If one side says 6, the other side, every D6, let me be clear, every D6 to all my role-playing people, role-playing RPGers, every D6, the common person calls those die, every D6, one side, if it, whatever number it is, the other side is going to add up to 7. But that's tools you can use. Some tools are just re-roll every single die in the dice pool. Some are, hey, draft a die, put it in the bag, pull out a die from the bag, and set that die for whatever you want. Now, the chance is still there. You could draft a red. I really don't need a red. Stick it in the bag, shake it, pull out a die, and you just pull out a red die, right? So that's just the chance side of it. but that's what the tools are. And so you have that early decision point you got to make on, do I want to go a more challenging game or do I want to go an easier game? And when we play with newer players, we encourage them to go with the lighter, easier board, because those boards already have, Robbie's kind of talked about it, the boards that you put in there, so it's a 20 square grid, already have some colors preset or numbers preset. Never a numbered color preset. It's either going to be colors or number, but it could have like 3 blues in a diagonal or 3 purples and then a bunch of greens or whatever, right? Or numbers near those to make those more challenging, so you can see ahead of time, oh wow, I have very specific things to put in those spots. So it's a fun thing. Like Robbie said, I like that. Even from the beginning, for hardcore crunchy gamers, you're thinking about it from the beginning. Do I want to go easier and try to max out my board and only have 3 orbs, so very few tools, or do I go super challenging and just challenge myself? I'm an egomaniac when it comes to games, so I always go the hardest game possible just to see if I can pull it out. So the situation you talked about, Elizabeth will tell you, like the last game we played at Sagrada the other day, like I just really need green. I really need a green. I really and I could not. And I looked at her board and she has like 6 greens, because that was her hidden goal, was the green die. And I could not get any green die just the way it worked. But it's one of those that I even though I'm not a big die player or a big chance game, in Sagrada, it doesn't bother me, because I still love trying to work my way around what is given to me. It's not, okay, I'm rolling die and risk, and I keep rolling ones, and I keep losing in risk, right? That's different than this. I love just, okay, what's it going to give us this turn? What can I do with that to make it work for me?
Yeah, it almost comes down to the world of like, what card's going to get drawn out of the deck, like thinking about Earth and what resources are going to show up, what's going to come to allow me to build this engine, to allow me to do this thing.
Yeah.
And then another, like, so not only do you have, Jason mentioned it, there's a private goal, right? So there are based on how many people are playing, there are cards passed out. So you get a color assigned to you in secret that you get extra points for as many die as you have on your board that are that color. So you can kind of pick out real fast where you're like, oh, Elizabeth has all the greens. Okay. She probably, like, she keeps drafting a lot of greens. Yeah. Okay, sick. She might have green. So now when you're planning, you can adjust accordingly of like, I may not get as many greens. But also there are public goals that are like patterns and things where you're trying to match. And it's like, all right, how many ones do you have of all 5 colors? You get 6 points for every set of ones that you have in all 5 colors, or things like that. Like, or for every 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 you have on your board, you're going to get 10 points, or however it shakes out. And I love the world of, okay, the variance of what we are looking for to pull to our board. We all know that we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6s. And we're all looking and going like, we have not seen a lot of 6s get pulled out during this game. So subtly, or not even subtly, everyone knows you're going for that. So it makes that really contested, but you can use that to your advantage of like, okay, a 6 came out. I have first pick. I know I can secure this 6, but everyone else is going to be going for that 6 as well. So like, okay, I can that probably will leave this blue 2 available, because looking around, no one really needs that blue 2. So there's like a world of, you can kind of solitaire it.
Yeah.
Or you can get really strategic in how you're looking at other players' windows of Elizabeth going for a lot of green. So I can block her and go for green, or I can just know that I can outplay that, like point wise, because I have reds and she's just leaving all these reds up for me too. It's so fun. And then that replay, and that's not to mention even the pattern of like, oh, well, I have to get a green because I chose this pattern and I didn't like realize like, okay, no, snap, I got to play for the green. It's the replayability. This is a game that Lindsay and we played it 2-player, and she was like, that was a blast. Let's reset and play it again. So we did. And then we finished and we played it a third time. Yep. Literally, first time we played, I remember texting Jason, and I will be the first to admit, I did not know what the word orthogonally meant when I sent this. And I finished my whole window the first time I played, and I was like, I think I cheated. Like, I don't think this actually works. I must have done something wrong. Yeah. So I sent Jason a picture to be like, is this legal? Because Lindsay did not finish her window the first game we played. And I was like, because it seemed like we just got here pretty easily. And sure enough, the next 2 times that we played it, I didn't finish my window either time because the ego got a hold of me and I went for super hard.
It's a hard thing. I like that about the game because now if you're a completionist, what Robbie just said is true. There will be, I think more times than not, you will not complete your board, which is not a major penalty, is -1 point for every open spot for your board. Because it's just that hard, and especially if you're playing another crunchy gamer who is what we call hate drafting. Oh wow, there's a perfect 2 yellow spot there, and there's a 2 yellow I don't need, but I'm going to take that 2 yellow and just stick it here because I just need a yellow. It doesn't really matter. So if especially if you're playing your opponents, which I truly is again my ego again because I feel like I can win every game. I almost never look at what other people's boards are because I want to win on my own merits. That's just incredibly arrogant. I will fully admit that. I don't get it. But when it was just me and Elizabeth, I caught myself looking a lot more at her board because I needed to see, because there's so few die. And that is it's not a downside. I think this game plays better at more players because it gives you more die in that dice pool. Now, more people are, excuse me, I'm just yelling into the mic. More people, I'll calm down. I'm very animated, as Robbie said. More people
fired up.
Are pulling die, but it just means more die at least when you're early in the draft order, right? 2-player was not bad. I know by no means am I saying 2-player is bad. I will happily play Sagrada 2-player each day, and it would never bother me, and I'd have fun with it. But it definitely plays better with a higher player count just because of those options for those die. But then I realized playing with Elizabeth, when it was just she and I was looking a little more at her board, trying to see, and I should have looked earlier because she was taking all those greens. I think I caught it too late, and when no more greens came out. The other unique thing, and it's funny because in Sagrada, because turn order always goes the same way, so you're always drafting before. You're going to draft before and after your left and the right. So if it's a 4-player game, there's one person you're never really going to mess with, and so Mandy and Elizabeth always start kind of funnily bickering that they shouldn't sit by each other because they keep taking each other's die, right? You know, because they're looking at each other's board. The same way. It's fun stuff though. I like that. I like that you can, the challenge of those things, right? On how much you want to play the other player versus how much I want to play my board. The goal. So just to give, for those who have played, who know, like the goals, like Robbie said, it's 5 different, how many times can you get all 5 colors on your board? Or how many times can you get 1 through 6 on your board? Now there's only 5 columns. Sometimes it's, no duplicated number in a column or no duplicated number in a row, no duplicated color in a column, no duplicated color in a row. So it's very hard to hit all those things perfectly. It's definitely a challenge, but I like that challenge for sure. A little easier in a larger game because you're just more die are coming out. Because the same thing happened to us. We really needed green. We poured out the bag. I'm like, oh, well, there's all those green right there that I really needed to complete my board. Because my last turn, I couldn't play either die. But I was okay with that. I was like, it is what it is. That's the way the game goes. I took the challenge. So I enjoyed that for sure. Speaking of that, like we kind of hinted around it, but the production of Sagrada for the game is amazing. Now its normal price on Amazon right now is $40. Little on the higher end, not massively higher, but little on the higher end. But the key to remember is you get dual layered boards. And by dual layered, it's not just a flat board and that you're laying a die on top of a flat piece of cardboard. It's literally the die sits in 20 different slots. And like Robbie alluded to, your targeted window that you're trying to build slides in there. So that alone is where a lot of that cost comes, is the cardboard to do those dual layer boards are amazing. The die are a little smaller than traditional D6s, but not massively small. They're not they're a little smaller than what you would consider a die, but it's big enough that big hands or small hands can handle those die just fine. And they're acrylic die, and they're a little translucent because they're meant to be a stained glass window and have kind of that look for it. So the production for those things are great. What everybody gets jealous when they play with me is that the 5 to 6 player expansion has an expansion mode, which we've never actually played the expansion mode. I've never even punched it. It's just sitting in the board, but it comes with a little dice tray. And like Christopher and Mandy, the first time they played with us and they went and bought theirs, it comes with it's just a little cardboard dice tray. And they're like, where's the dice tray? I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. That's the expansion. Cause I bought the expansion at the very beginning. Cause we roll the die and then pass the dice tray along. Like, you just go buy a dice tray. You can go put it in a bowl. It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
But to have one that's thematically with it, that's a little cardboard thing, was just really fun for sure. But the production is top notch, and we already alluded to it, and we'll get your thoughts on it as well. But the art, because it's a bunch of crystal mosaic looking windows, right? And your player boards are all individual colors. You know what color you are, and just the detail in that window and those boards is amazing. Do you agree, Robbie?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. It is like when you first get into board gaming, you go to Target, you go to Barnes and Noble, you go to all the different places, right? And you go buy these games. You open it up and you're like, wow, there's a lot more detail than I remember for a game of Sorry. Like that when we think about like Monopoly, right? Like, I remember we had a Phantom Menace version of Monopoly that had this plastic piece that like slid around the board, and then the properties slid into that plastic piece. So it was so easy to just whoop, you pull it out. Awesome. So cool. And I remember thinking, this is peak board games. Like they will never make a board game as nice as this. When I think about Sagrada, like in terms of a game, you almost, when I think of like kickstarting a game, usually they'll sell like custom components, things like that to like spice it up. When I think about Sagrada, I legitimately could not conceptualize if they had a Kickstarter for it or a deluxe edition, things like that, other than making like crazier looking die. The game is already so beautiful and the components are so nice. I don't know what they would upgrade.
Yeah.
Like, because you couldn't go metal die because then they wouldn't be the stained glass window. You couldn't really even go like metal, like trays, because I feel like it would be too clunky, things like that. Like it's just so well done. The theming is there. And when you have this finished piece with all of your dies sitting there, I know Jason posted a picture. If you haven't followed us on Instagram, he posted a picture of it. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It truly, like, I was trying to think of games that in their base version blow me away in terms of the production quality. Everdell is about the only one that I'm like immediately coming to mind and being like, I was just blown away by how stunning this game looked for the base game.
I totally agree. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's amazing. All they could do would be like, okay, upgrade the scoring marker, right? Little things have nothing to do with the game. To your point about, okay, let's go and do a Kickstarter version. It's like, well, the game is pretty good. Okay, the little scoring track, we could make it a little bigger, maybe. We could, because the scoring markers are just these little B circles because the scoring track's small. Not bad small. It's just fine because you literally use that scoring track at the very end of the game. That's the only time you do it because that's about it. But everything else is great on it. Talking about the production as well. So like I kind of joked in our show notes. I went back and forth, but like the theme of this is, like we said, building a stained glass window, a mosaic of a window, and it's not. So thematically, does it really feel like you're doing that? No. But yes, because at the end, you have this work of art. You have what, if you look at it, it's like, oh, now I'm not putting pieces of glass in the window or anything like that, the deep thematics of a Euro game, but the principle of the end of the game, you have this multitude of colors on a board, especially with the translucent looking die, that you could conceptualize, oh, that's a window. And even with the way your player board is, you're putting the die basically in a window underneath a bigger window, right? So you're actually building that there, and it just... It makes sense, and it's beautiful for sure. And while it's not dead nail in the head thematic, at the end of that, you're like, oh wow, I can definitely see it there, and it's easy to enjoy the look at it, and it photographs really well, to be honest, right? The art on that is so nice. The dice are so nice. It photographs well. It's dice. You have fun playing with die as you're playing through it. So it's definitely a fun guy. Definitely a fun game for sure. Speaking of fun, I guess we should do our cookie ratings. You got anything else to add, Robbie? You ready to go cookie ratings?
I want to talk about the AP just for a quick second.
Yeah.
Because I know that is, and I, as the theme guy of our podcast, who, self-proclaimed theme is everything for me, or at least helps me get way hype about it. I agree. When you're building your board, you're not like, oh yeah, I feel like I'm building a window. Yeah, I'm doing it. But truly, when you get to the end, you're like, it kind of, once you've played it, you kind of get excited to see how pretty it's going to look at the end. And the slightly translucent die is just like the chef's kiss to it. I literally just thought like, man, could I like find like a really thin strip of LED and like, just if you think like put that around the edge, how cool that would make it like shine through the like, that would be sick
for sure.
But it would make it really hard to pull the die out because it'd be so deep. But AP, and this is what, before we dove in, like I wanted to talk about analysis paralysis. For those of you who we've used this term, once we get to like episode 25, we're going to have so many little like words that we've used that people are just going to dive in with us. This is a game that I think of Calico, where you're just grabbing a piece of quilt and you're throwing it on your board. Decision done. Yep. Should be easy. But the AP is insane in Calico because you're drafting. And this is baby Calico to a degree, because you from the first decision for you to draft a die and you put it in your window, that's there for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
And like, you may have an artisan tool that lets you like adjust one, because those do exist, but you may not have gotten one of those that game. So like, you're stuck from the get-go, but you don't really feel it early on. That's fine. So where this game is fascinating to me is you start off with basically no analysis paralysis. You're just kind of like grooving. Okay, for the first 2 or 3 rounds, you're like, all right, I'll take this one. And then I'll take this one. Bang, 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 bang. And you're just taking those die free willy-nilly. You may be like, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 if I can right off the bat and get one of the big scoring goals, whatever it may be. The middle of the game gets the crunchiest, because you're like, okay, my window has kind of established itself. I know that I'm looking for these die and these die and these die. But then like the last 2 rounds, I think why when you finish Sagrada that you want to dive in and play it again is because the last like 2 rounds go so fast, because your board is limited by the orthogonal pieces. So like, looking at the spaces I have available, I have an open spot right here. It can't be these colors because those are right next to each other, and it can't be these numbers. So there is like a very particular die that can go in this spot. And if it gets to my turn and those die aren't there, like at that point, I'm either not drafting a die, I'm using an artisan tool, or I'm like, I have to draft something. Yeah, I'm taking that too from you. Like, those are your only options. So it goes so fast at the end. And I don't know of any other games, at least when I was trying to prep for the show, that's true for. That like, no AP, the middle's crunchy, but like once you get to the end, you're zooming through the decisions.
Yep. You hit the nail on the head. Right? That's why I put in our show notes that even with more players, AP is there, but not really, because you encapsulate it so well, and that it starts limiting what you can do. Because even in Calico, AP stays with you, because now you're trying to maximize the few turns you have left. Well, do I go for buttons? Do I try to get this goal here? Do I try to do that? Well, because Calico has no restrictions on what you can play, so you can play anything anywhere. Whereas in Sagrada, there are specific restrictions for what you can play. But but there's less AP with that, so because it forces you into less AP because I can only do this or I can only do that. And then even with when I played with players who do play slower, like in a 6-player game, early on, like you said, you're trying, what path am I going to take? But as the game goes, those turns go really fast because there's only so much you can do. And typically in crunchier games, it slows down. But you really, like you described, it kind of speeds up in a weird way. And it's super, because there's only so many things you can do unless you're thinking about, okay, am I going to do a tool or not? And you have the AP, do I spend my orbs to do a tool? But the actual drafting of the die is not that much that way. The base game of Azul and even Azul Silver Pavilion are kind of in that way. And that early, you're kind of, what do I want to do? But the game forces you down a certain path as you go. So that's close enough. But I can't think of anything else in which you actually go faster in a cruncher game as opposed to slowing down. So the way you captured that was great.
Yeah. So I'll go first on cookie rating because I feel like most of the time, as the guy who edits it, I feel like most of the time you end up first. So I'll go first to let you wait on the hearing from the master. And so for me, when I think about this game, there are so many positives to it. And truly, not a lot of negatives in my mind. The replayability is super high. The production quality is really nice. The strategy's there. The fun of what die are coming out. The theme is there. So many positives. But the big thing, it's a chocolate chip for me. And the reason that I'm not putting it in a double doozy is this is a game that, man, do we enjoy. We love it. Like I said, the first time we played it 3 times. And when we played it, we actually rented it from the library, and we probably played it 8 times in the week that we had it from the library.
Yep.
Because almost every time we played it back to back just to keep it going.
Yeah.
But it's a game that when I'm in it, I love it and I'm super excited and I would love to introduce people to it, but it's not. The reason it's just outside of a double doozy for me is it's not a game that when Lindsay and I are just like, it's just the two of us, that we've ever been like, you know what we haven't played in a bit? We need to get Sagrada. We need to go get Sagrada. It just doesn't have. When you're in it, you love it, but I'm not I don't crave it if I've not played it in a while.
Yep.
So,
yep.
I don't know if that's a valid reason to not give it a double doozy, but that's just where I am.
I can relate to that for sure because I have games that are that way that when they come up, I like it, but I don't ever really think about playing it, if that makes sense at all, right? Kind of what you said, right? Okay, if it's there and if somebody brings it out, you'll be happy to play it and y'all will have a good time playing it, but it's never calling you to play that game. And I would say Sagrada is similar to me in that I'd rather you get just the call to play it, but it's a great game to introduce people to gaming. Because we own it, we've done that for sure. Because I was just looking back through my BG stats. We played it with Dakota and Marissa last fall. I think that was the first game night we ever had with them. We played it. We played it. I showed it at USDGC. We had a 6-player game with Noah and Gabby and Connor in it, and Gabby actually won that game. And so new players can win that game. Now Gabby's a gamer. Cause they don't really play a lot of games. When I played with Gabby, she's definitely a gamer between her and Connor, so that's always fun. But it's a game that's great because we've owned it for so long. It's easy to introduce, and I realized that I like that. It's not. We talked about the thematics. You definitely can see the art of it, but I like the challenge and the puzzle of that. Whereas some Euros are puzzle, but there's so much going on in this massive puzzle. Whereas I love just being able to do this. And there's a fantastic Sagrada app. Like I say this for a lot of our games, but the app for Sagrada is amazing. It's so great. And you can play Sagrada really, really quick. I play that app so many times because I like just seeing what I can do. Can I beat it? Has challenges on there, has solo challenges on it. For me, the way you described your rating is honestly very similar to how I think about it. In that I don't really have the call for it, but when I play it, it's one, and I've said this on other games for sure, but when I play it, I'm reminded by just how much I love it. Whereas Azul is similar, we haven't talked about Azul. And Azul, there's a good chance one of the Azuls will be a primary game on one of our Bards of the board in the future because we've talked around it a little bit. When I play Azul, I really like it, but it's not one that I'm like, oh man, I'm calling to do that, or it's going to be an all-time great. But Sagrada just comes back to, because it's a quick, easy, super puzzle, not super thematic, not a lot of craziness going on. Let's see what the dice can go, and let's see how I can beat this board with the dice they're giving to me. So I am, even though our descriptions are almost the same, I'm a double doozy without question. Like, without doubt. It's not even a is it or is it not. It's absolutely a double doozy. I will happily play this over and over and over because I just want to see what I can do. I've played it over and over in the app. We've had it for a long time. I can't remember. I don't think they did a tabletop. Did they do a tabletop with Sagrada? I don't think they did. So I don't even know how we got Sagrada, but we've had it for a long time. Even in, I've only had BG stats for 3 years, and I have 10 plays, and I've only won it once out of 10 games, but it's still a double doozy. That's how much I love this. Elizabeth went 3, so even though Elizabeth complains about me winning a lot, she tends to win these other games. But I love Sagrada. It's a double doozy for sure. When we talked about, because we've talked, Robbie and I talk a lot about what games we want to cover in the future. And I always knew, even when I talked about Sagrada, I'm like, it's going to be a double doozy. It's one that doesn't call to me. So to encapsulate, I don't really think about it calling to me, but as soon as I play it, I'm like, this is a top 20 game for sure for me. Like, top 20 all time. Of all those kind of puzzly games, there's a whole genre of roll and writes. This isn't a roll and write, but it's very similar. Roll and writes are, you roll a die, you put a number somewhere, you see what you can do. You roll a die, you put a number somewhere, see what you can do. Or draw a shape or something like that. Sagrada is kind of like that. And ironically, there's a legacy version of Sagrada called Sagrada Artisans that I think you're actually coloring it in. You're not. We're going to do the legacy version of Sagrada, but their early reviews of the legacy version of Sagrada is pretty good. So, but I think you're actually coloring it in as you go. You have colored pencils, if I remember or not. But that's one that Elizabeth and I are going to do next year, because we're doing totally tangential. We're going to do Ticket to Ride Legacy this summer when Ryder comes home for college. But I love the puzzle of Sagrada. I'm repeating myself as a double doozy all the way.
Hey, I'm here for it. I think that it is the test of time. Is I bet it will eventually climb for me. It just truly is a like. Yeah, I haven't had it for the time, but the app makes total sense, and it's definitely one. Board Game Arena, check it out, because you can play it really fast and see. And I think when you get to the tactile nature of rolling the die and placing them and all of that, it will bump it up for you wholeheartedly. And the puzzle solving is really, really great. So y'all, that is going to wrap it up for our episode. And I hope you enjoyed it. I'm like keeping an eye on it, Jason, because we have been over an hour on almost all the episodes, but I feel like today we got a good discussion, but we kept it under.
Yep. I think so. Yeah. It looks like the timer's under it. So that's good.
Yeah. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. And if you know what, if you guys like it being long, let us know in the comments in the YouTube section. So, but we try to make it not beat a dead horse with it. So hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. Jason, I'll see you on Thursday. Yeah, and for everyone, I'll see you when this is dropped.
Say, when we're literally going to meet together about the same time, right around 3:00 on Thursday. We're going to be linking up to set up the booth. So it's going to be awesome.
I love it. But for the listeners, we'll see you in 2 weeks for our next episode. Y'all have a great one.
See ya.